I had this experience of putting operational teams with digital teams to work together to discover what pain points digitalization could solve in innovative business model. And I thought, okay, this experience is going to be very unique, because if you look at the status quo of construction, I mean, the leaders, the established companies, they don't have this digital mindset, they don't have this digital experience, they have not made it. And I don't think also this is going to be a space where young techie people
are gonna
put their attention on and go through it. So I thought, okay, I have the ingredients around me to make that possible. Also, the successful exit, I know that would be very helpful. That could lead me, because of my reputation in Spain, to open doors for potential clients, to raise capital, to attract talent, everything.
What if the buildings we live in could heal the planet instead of harming it? Lucas Carné is the founder of 011H. After founding and scaling Privalia into one of Spain's top e-commerce businesses, he chose to tackle construction, a $10 trillion industry responsible for 39% of global CO2 emissions. He is reimagining entire value chains with technology and sustainability, proving that long-term thinking can build not just homes, but also a better future. Welcome to Reinventing Capitalism, the podcast where I, Claudia Thomas, decode the success of for-profit impact businesses through the stories of their founders. Our goal is to inspire you towards a purpose-driven career, because life's too short for boring jobs and soul-crushing corporations. Quick note before we get back to the episode. Just give me 30 seconds of your time. 2 things. The first is a huge thank you for listening and tuning into the show week after week. It means the world to me. And the second is that we are just getting started. If you enjoy what we do here, please join the 14% of people that listen to this podcast regularly and follow us on this app. I promise to do everything in my power to make this show as good as I can, now and into the future. Thank you. We're here in your offices today. We're going to start the interview that you're giving to Reinventing Capitalism. And I want to start with a more conceptual concept. Every founder I speak with has a moment, turning point, where they had a spark in which they saw something very clearly that they decided to go for. Mm-hmm. And I want to understand which was yours. So tell me if there was a specific moment when you knew that you wanted to do something more impactful rather than just successful.
So I think most entrepreneurs have always this spark active inside. At least that's my case. I sold my previous company, Privalia, a very successful e-commerce venture. And after that sale, I exited the company 2.5 years later. And I decided to enjoy retired life and do everything I always couldn't do because I didn't have time, and have this freedom, and also enjoy the family because I had 2 newborn kids.
Newborn?
Yeah, one was 1 year old and the boy was 2.5 years old.
Okay.
So I wanted to enjoy them. I wanted to accompany my wife on that family experience, and I wanted to enjoy freedom. But after a while, less than a year, I think this spark, this active spark, told me that probably that life was not the more purposeful life for me, that I was missing something, and that I was starting to pay attention to things that didn't matter and to spend time on things that didn't matter.
Like what?
I'm a cycling lover, so I remember one day I was browsing the internet looking for a small bag to carry my spares on the bike.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I've been here in the sofa 3 hours just looking for these bags that cost from 5 to 25 euros.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Not really.
And yeah, I think I like the emotion, the purpose, the rhythm, and all the experience that is around being an entrepreneur. And my experience right now, being an entrepreneur in my 50s, is very different than being an entrepreneur on my 30s.
I can imagine.
In terms of, okay, what really matters, what motivates me, what I'm looking for.
There are a lot of things here that I think are very relevant. The first one is that you just mentioned that you sold your company.
Mm-hmm.
I think for what I read, it was sold for 500 million, which made it one of the biggest exits in Spain at the time. So what happens as a founder when you sell your company? Like, what happens next?
Yeah, for me it was like an explosion of happiness, but it was an explosion of happiness because I had a very fulfilled life at a personal level. I told you about my 2 kids, my wife, our family project. So I think that having closed stage in my life that gave me everything, and knowing that probably the legacy that I built had a second chance in the hands of a bigger company with more resources was gonna be a better second phase for this company, so that will empower and make my legacy more sustainable. And that would be great for everyone, my team, our consumers. So that feeling of, okay, I've achieved something, I've created a legacy, this legacy is gonna continue growing, and I can enjoy a completely different phase of my life with this new family project. For me, that was like, probably one of the best feelings I've ever had. I could also feel the recognition of my wife about all the effort invested there, because I met my wife at Privalia at that venture. So that venture,
she was working for you.
Yeah, that venture gave me everything.
Okay.
It gave me an amazing professional career, an amazing developer as a professional, as a person. It gave me tens of friendships, and it gave me also my family and my wealth to buy my freedom and be able now to work because I just feel I have to do it.
Yeah. So that's actually a very good point. So you sold your company, you could have retired. When do you decide that you want to not only start a new company, but start a mission-driven company?
Yeah. I was always curious about real estate and living, because affordability of living has been an issue for a while. So I had always like these thoughts about, okay, are there new models of living that are more affordable, more flexible, that provide a better experience for the young people that is probably gonna look for more mobility, more flexibility, having different options of living in different stages of their life, more commuting, and probably they are more digital, so they could interact with the landlord or the living space in a more digital way, etc., etc. No? So when I left the company, I had those thoughts. I started to build on them, and I was very curious, so I started to read reports and talk to people, but just for the sake of curiosity. And while I was doing that, I discovered that there were a lot of new living models from the developer side. So all these co-housings, co-living, senior livings, all this flex living approach and collaborative living. But I started to focus my attention on the problem of construction, because I learned not only that construction has strong limitations in production capacity, productivity, because labor is fleeing, because methods are still from last century, because all the supply chain is very fragmented. I also discovered a fact, which is no digitalization at all in the construction process, really impacting. And I discovered something I was not aware of, which is the big impact in the environment. So that really caught my attention because at that time I was becoming very, very conscious with climate change and the big risk of climate change. So I started to incorporate also in my life habits aligned with mitigating climate change.
What did you change?
Like consumption pattern that was much more minimalist, obviously electrifying my house, my mobility, being much more aware on the amount of traveling involving long distance planes, but consuming less water, less heating, so all of that. I was very obsessed also with food and make sure that we buy what we eat.
Yeah.
And there are not leftovers. So I became much more veggie driven in my diet. Okay. So I started to change my habits, and I discovered that construction was one of the most damaging industries in terms of carbon emissions, waste generation, consumption of non-circular or renewable materials, water consumption, etc. So suddenly I thought like there's a big opportunity here of a massive industry that is very impactful for the living of people with a problem which is old, which is living affordability, but also with an impact in the environment that is huge and there's no solution. Mm-hmm. And probably part of the solution comes not only with new materials, new construction methods, more integration, but how digitalization can enable that. Yeah. And this is where I had an experience. Yeah. I created a new commerce model, a new retail model enabled by internet. So I had this experience of putting operational teams with digital teams to work together to discover what pain points digitalization could solve in innovative business models. And I thought, okay, this experience is going to be very unique, because if you look at the status quo of construction, I mean, the leaders, the established companies, they don't have this digital mindset, they don't have this digital experience, they have not made it. And I don't think also this is going to be a space where young, techie people are gonna put their attention on and go through it. So I thought, okay, I have the ingredients around me to make that possible. Also, the successful exit, I know that would be very helpful. That could lead me, because of my reputation in Spain, to open doors for potential clients, to raise capital, to attract talent, everything. So I thought, okay, I'm probably well prepared to be the one trying to solve this problem. Yeah. And I didn't have any more like an economic motivation or a professional motivation about my own development.
Which was the motivation then?
To make something really impactful, big, to challenge a status quo that was completely broken, which somehow has commonalities with my motivation when I started Privalia, because I'm very creative, I'm a dreamer, I like to do things to challenge the status quo, I'm very competitive, I like to compete and I like to win. Mm-hmm, so all of that stays.
You could translate it.
But when I was 30, I wanted to succeed also as a professional. I wanted to earn a comfortable life. Mm-hmm. And this is something that now has changed. I had this, but now, I mean, it's from my freedom and the purpose of what I'm doing and how this fulfills me and what's the real impact I can make in society that is driving me on 011H. And I think that's much more sustainable as a motivation than being successful as a professional.
Definitely more successful in the long term.
Yeah, and it makes you more resilient, because if you want to be successful as a professional, probably you can feel at some point in time, in difficult times, that the company you are in, it's not the best way to do that, you change.
Yeah.
But if you know that what you are doing has this big impact, and I mean, you are convinced that there's no other way to do it, and this is what is really driving you,
you stay,
you continue.
And you're resilient.
Yeah.
So you found these, you found this problem, You're aware of the change in motivations and the change in your success and the definition of success. So how do you build it? So like, what does 011H actually do?
Yeah, we are trying to solve a trilemma, which is a very difficult problem to solve in construction today, which is how can we increase production capacity to build what is needed? How can we do it without the existing externalities, without the carbon footprint, the waste, consumption of water, etc., that this industry is now impacting the planet, and at the same time at a competitive cost of even cheaper. So more production capacity, carbon neutral and cheaper.
And
so
how?
This is an unresolved problem. This is our tasks and this will be our contribution. And to do that, we are creating what I like to call a neo builder.
Okay.
Or people often call like a digital general contractor, which is a construction company that substitutes artisan works on site by industrialized building solutions. Okay, that's the first level. The second is how can we maximize in these industrialized solutions circular and low carbon materials and principles. That's the second. The third one is how can we bring together and streamline all the supply chain of construction. That means mainly how can we put together design and construction in the same team with the same goal. And the fourth one is, okay, how can we enable that with new digitalization? So how can we create digital products or a tech platform that brings together all the supply chain, doing design and build with prefab solutions and sustainable materials. So that's what we do.
Which materials do you use that are not used by the traditional constructing industry?
Yeah, most construction is being run on Portland concrete or steel. So we are bringing new materials in construction like mass timber, for example, recycled materials. But I would say that, recycled materials on one side and new materials like mass timber, structural mass timber, are the two main contributions in the material side. Also, there's a contribution there which is not only which materials are you using, but how can you design your building as a set of parts that can be reused or recycle once you refurbish the building or once you dismantle the building. So your building becomes like a bank of materials for future buildings or future uses.
Yeah.
So let's say on this second level, the first one was industrialization. The second one is materials, low carbon or circular materials or principles. It's not only about the materials, but also about how you put them together and how can you disassemble them after the life cycle and reuse them.
That's very similar to textiles, where you need to choose exactly which materials you can put together in order to decompose them after, because otherwise polyester, for example, it's very difficult to decompose. And so then even if it has potential to be recycled, you can, because you cannot separate these materials.
Yeah.
So that's super, super important.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. So to answer your question, we created this new builder, which combines technology to bring together and streamline all the supply chain, the design and the build with all the suppliers of industrialized and sustainable building solutions. And we are now designing and building big projects for residential real estate developers, for the time being in Spain, and focus on the living segment. That
I was going to ask exactly that. So which types of buildings do you prioritize?
Yeah, so we do big projects meaning from 50 dwellings above, for urban and peri-urban densification, which are the places that are gaining more and more population, more and more density, and that are really dense in terms of affordability, and obviously that generate the main impact in terms of carbon emissions, etc. So the idea is to do these big buildings to provide a better and more affordable living in high density urban and peri-urban areas in order to tackle living affordability and lower carbon emissions derived from this industry.
Do you have any numbers of the impact that any of the buildings that you've built have had?
Yes. Right now, buildings in terms of carbon emissions are valued on two different impacts. One is embodied carbon, so the materials you are using, the processing and transformation of those materials, the construction process, future refurbishments, etc. That's one. The second one is operational carbon. So I need to light and heat the buildings. For that you consume energy, and that's the carbon emissions you generate for operating, for living. Okay,
so one is construction and the other one it's the ones that people live there, what they emit.
So embodied carbon and operational carbon.
Got it.
On new construction, at least in Europe and specifically in Spain, most building codes already require nearly zero operational carbon buildings. So the big impact is on the embodied carbon. Okay. So obviously there's a big impact in existing buildings on refurbishment, because many buildings that have been built 50, 40 years ago with a completely different building code, they need refurbishment, especially on the enveloping or on the primary energy consumption for heating or water. We need to change that. But on new construction, the current building codes already oblige you to have operationally almost neutral carbon buildings. But the challenge is now on the embodied carbon. And here's where we are working with this model of embracing these new materials, designing with these principles for disassembly, and also moving to a more industrialized construction where you can be much more efficient in the use of materials, in the management of waste, etc.
Yeah. And who are the stakeholders in your ecosystem that you believe are critical to achieving as much impact as possible?
Yeah, all of them, because now we are building for developers. Developers, they have access to capital, they have access to land, and they need people like us that convert the land into units to sell or to rent. Okay, those developers have also the households that will buy or rent the properties. But you have also all the supply chain, manufacturers, trades that will build the materials and the solutions and will put together all of them. So to have an impact, you need action on all of them. All of them. Why? Because hopefully households will at some point in time prefer more efficient buildings to live, or even buildings that they know they have a lower carbon footprint, so equal to equal, they will favor that because they will be more conscious. We want developers that are already valuing sustainability and being able to make an effort to invest in new methods of construction and to risk there and to sell these new methods and these different buildings to their customers. And obviously, we as integrators need also a growing supply chain of these new materials and these new building solutions. So we cannot run faster than the ecosystem of new solutions that we need to integrate and put together from the design into our construction projects. No? That means facades, bathpots, internal walls and partitions, cores, stairs, many things that are in a building. Also the finishes and the materials that you are using for your floors, for your whatever, paintings. So you need this industrial ecosystem also to grow. And we see ourselves as also enablers of that growing, because we are pushing that. And we are trying to sell this new method of construction and this new type of buildings to our developers.
Hi, can I ask you a quick favor? Every week, we dive into the stories of founders that do more than just make money. Our mission is to prove that a career in impact can be both purposeful and financially sustainable. If you believe in creating meaningful work, share today's episode with one friend who's ready to make a difference. It would mean a great deal to me. Your support is what keeps this show alive and growing. Thank you. And how about the regulators? Are they critical to achieving these impacts in the not only for yourself, but like to change the mentality of how other stakeholders in the ecosystem operate?
Yeah, they are the most critical ones. Why? Because right now people is paying far what they should pay for living, so they struggle to get to the 30th or 31st of each month. So right now, at least talking about the mass market, people is not gonna pay more to live in lower embodied carbon buildings. Okay, developers have institutional investors, and most of those investors will like a more sustainable activity from their investment, but they will not sacrifice return on investment, return on equity for sustainability. Okay, so if there's no a way where that can be matched, and because you are more sustainable you can have higher returns, they will not accept lower returns
because of sustainability,
to provide the same amount of capital for sustainability. Okay, that's what we have experienced. So it's sustainability, yes, but without sacrificing profits.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you have the other constructors, so the status quo that we are trying to, let's say, disrupt. Their margins are very, very low. They cannot even make acceptable profits with the externalities they are generating. If you ask them to accept a green premium and reduce even more their profitability, it's a no. And then you have the suppliers. So the suppliers are at the end. Obviously, if the people living is not paying more, the developers are not paying more or reducing their profits because their shareholders will not accept. Contractors will not even, because their margins are very reduced, they will not buy materials that are more sustainable but cost more, or solutions that are more sustainable but cost more. So you have only two levers for that. One is regulation, regulation that put the regulatory framework to really make sure that capital at a lower cost can flow if they meet sustainability requirements, or to oblige developers to build buildings that are more sustainable. Or you have people like us, pioneers, that are able to accept this challenge in order to compete with the status quo without sacrificing, let's say, any competitiveness in terms of the cost of our product, but taking into account these externalities. So now we are doing buildings with parts that are more expensive, but thanks to this model of developing technology to streamline the process, make it more efficient, the sum of the parts work. With conventional construction, it doesn't work. I mean, if you put timber versus concrete, or a prefab bathroom versus an artisan bathroom, they are both more expensive. So you need to make sure that you have a model that having these more expensive parts at the end have the same or lower cost than conventional.
Absolutely.
So this is what we are doing. No? So I think regulation will be the main driver, and then some pioneers that will have this strong vision and willingness to accept the challenge of being cost competitive but doing things better. Which, I mean, requires a big effort, long-term vision, and obviously resilience.
Actually, this leads me to think about systemic change, because systemic change comes from everyone involved in a society. It's not an entrepreneur, it's not a regulator, like it's everyone that uses a product or a service. How do you think that technology can enable systemic change? Yeah,
I think technology is the superpower that can make the full equation work. So I was talking to you about the trilemma, okay? How can we increase productivity and production capacity being carbon neutral at a lower cost? So what is gonna enable that, which is basically improving productivity, is digitalization. Without digitalization, we couldn't integrate all the supply chain with all the kit of parts to design faster, with less hours of architecture, with less hours of engineering, and also with an on-site just-in-time process to assemble that quick, more reliable, and also to lower all the amount of manual work that is left. So technology is the superpower that is helping us to solve this trilemma. And I like to compare ourselves with Batman.
Yeah.
Batman is the only superhero that doesn't have a superpower, no? But he has cash and technology enables him as a superpower. So I like to talk about Zero11H as the super hero without superpowers, or the Batman in construction.
Yeah. I want to ask one question about purpose-driven careers. Almost like 35% of our listeners are wannabe social entrepreneurs. So what do you think are the skills or mindsets that are essential for purpose-driven entrepreneurs to succeed?
I think there's one, which is intentionality. If you do that just because it's the hype, or because at a certain point in time there's more impact capital, I don't think you will have the resilience to go till the end. Okay, so real intentionality, I think it's a prerequisite for that. The second one is being aware that most of the industries will not accept a green premium, and that means, or either you can raise the capital to do all the work and all the learning and all the development and take the time to really reduce this green premium to zero and be competitive, or you need to figure out a model where you convert sustainability into saving. Which I think it's what most of the social entrepreneurs should look for, okay? I mean, if I do something more efficient, this will have a lower bill in terms of energy. This will save money for the user, okay? So you need to figure out how do you convert sustainability into a competitive advantage, no? In my case, if I can do buildings using less material, I'm saving material, I should save cost, okay? So if I can reduce the number of parts, I can save again materials, but I can save labor, I can reduce problems or reworks, I can save costs, no? So yeah, I think in my case these
are the two main
the main tips. Intentionality as the basis, but then cash to buy time to really drive all this path until you reduce the green premium, and always thinking about how do you convert sustainability into a competitive or cost advantage. Yeah.
You're obviously a very successful entrepreneur, but I have to ask the question, is there anything you would have liked to know before founding 011H that you could have not predicted after founding Privalia?
What I've learned these 5 years that I didn't know is that changing this industry is very tough, very, very tough. I mean, developing and building high-rise buildings is operationally very complex. There are many risks involved, and things are not being done the way they are done because in this industry there are no interest or people is not competent. I mean, there are a lot of interest, people is very competent, but it's very difficult. So I thought that would be easier, or I didn't think that would be so difficult. Okay, it's a very conservative space because all of that. So changing behaviors, mindsets, adoption of things that are unknown is very hard. Having said that, if I had known that in advance, I don't know if I would have started the company.
Yeah.
No? So sometimes I think for entrepreneurs, having not all the information and not being aware of the reality that will come, and having this point of unconsciousness is also an advantage.
Yeah.
So that's clearly my case. No? At some point in time, I feel that if we make it, it's because we didn't know it was impossible.
Yeah, fair enough. You've been saying how hard it is to change people's mindsets in this industry. Who are your competitors? Like, are there a lot of companies doing or trying to do the same?
No, this is an unproven model. There has been and there are some initiatives worldwide attacking the same problem for different angles, but so far none of them has demonstrated really to succeed at a scale. And there has been a lot of dead companies in the last 5 years trying to do the same. So we are really competing against the status quo and against ourselves. I think it's a competition mainly against ourselves, because everybody is pretty clear and there's a consensus that this industry needs to go through the way we are drawing. Okay, so people in the industry love our vision and love the levers we are driving to achieve this vision, but they all think that this is very, very difficult. And they are skeptic that someone will
make it.
So we are competing about our capacity to make it happen. If we make it happen, our real competitors right now for the projects we are building is conventional designers and builders. The battle will be won. So
are you planning on expanding outside of Spain?
Yes, certainly. We want to scale our impact. That means going beyond borders. But we need to go step by step. In fact, we wrote a strategic manifesto 5 years ago when we started the company. And the manifesto is very clear. First, we win as a neo builder in the living segment in Spain. Then we use this learning and profits to expand to other segments in Spain, like commercial buildings, offices, industrial buildings, etc. Then we do that in other geographies. And while we are doing that, we will open our tech platform to really enable anyone in the industry, any designer, any builder, to do the same as 011H through our platform and scale that impact beyond borders, even beyond our projects. So there are like 4 chapters. We are in the first one, and we need to go step by step. First is we ourselves prove that we can build better and that this is scalable in Spain in the living segments. Because only that is a probably multi-billion opportunity. Okay, so our vision is to be an open platform and scale even globally the impact. But right now we are in chapter 1, which is transform living in the Spanish market and become the new standard in construction.
And out of curiosity, why did you call it 011H?
We wanted a brand that was completely different, and everybody uses words for their branding. We decided, okay, let's use numbers, and because digitalization is our superpower, we thought the 0 and the 1 in that brand will make a lot of sense. But also 011 are the first digits of the Fibonacci succession. And the Fibonacci succession has some relationships with what we are doing. I told you we are using a lot of mass timber in our buildings. So conifers, when they grow, the trees grow, the branches follow the Fibonacci succession. Yeah, and also, I don't know if you are aware that Fibonacci succession is behind the Aurea proportion, which is very used in design. I like the Fibonacci succession, the parallelisms with what we were doing. But yeah, the main reason was, okay, let's do a completely different brand and let's have the 01 of digital, which is our superpower. And the H comes from housing.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, housing,
but it's hard sometimes
habitat,
to say, like 011H, like you actually have to think about the name before saying it.
Yeah. Anyway, I can change the story because I remember once I told about the new company to a friend in the UK, and he told me, okay, I like the name, the 11th hour, no? It's now or never. And I didn't know the expression, but I thought, okay, yeah, that's a good one. And now I'm using that when I do presentations sometimes. The last slide is 011H is the 11th hour for construction.
Well, you have many stories there, which is always nice. You can use one or the other depending on the context.
Once you win, you can rewrite the story, right?
Exactly. Thank you so much, Lucas, for having me here in your offices. I've loved coming here, seeing everyone, and it's been super insightful to learn and understand the transition from someone that's been super successful in one aspect of their lives and moving towards being more purposeful and trying to help actually more people from the ground up. So I just wish more entrepreneurs are inspired by your story and are willing to do the same at some point in their life.
Thank you to having you here, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to inspire more people.